Hello, welcome back to Behind the Faders, the live sound channel. Today we're wrapping up our little series about speech. I told you the right mindset, the right approach to mixing speech. We talked about all the different microphones that I used, and I told you how, at least I set up my desk and my channels. So today I want to talk about the biggest mistakes I always made mixing speech, so you don't have to make these mistakes yourself. And the first one is already a big one, and I made this mistake for way too long and far too often. And that mistake is not to have a volume strategy for your event. I mean, we're talking about speech events with mixed microphone types and all that, so normal run-of-the-mill. Let me give you a scenario. An event like that very often starts with the video that's being played. And very often the client may ask you to play that video pretty loud so the people in the room know that the event starts, and there might be people still outside of the room to let them know to come in because the event starts. And very often in this video there will be an off voice, a well-produced, polished, strong off voice. So after the video there might be a host coming on stage, probably using a headset if he needs to read something, or if not, very often a handheld mic, because these people are usually kind of pro speakers, so they know that a clip mic is not the best choice, but they don't want to wear a headset all day because they're only coming up every once in a while for a few minutes, so they choose a handheld very often. And this host will also have a strong, trained voice. He knows how to handle a microphone, and his voice will, of course, not be as strong as the one in the video before, but still, you think, well, easy enough. It's ideal. Strong voice, handheld mic, and you go for it. Now the host announces the CEO of the company wearing a clip mic. And now the CEO comes on, and he's probably also an experienced speaker, but he has a clip mic. So his voice will be so weak against the host with his handheld mic. And now while you're trying to work on it, so you wolf down on the EQ, trying to kind of make it somewhat better, then hell breaks loose around you, because the intercom will ring with somebody at the other end telling you need to turn this guy up, while somebody is tapping you on the shoulder, probably guys from the agency or your boss or somebody. They will all be standing around you telling you to turn this guy up. So as if they don't trust you to hear that yourself, and as if they don't see that you're already working on it. So they interrupt your work even more. So the situation can become really ugly, even for your career if you're very unlucky. So how to avoid this as much as possible? Let's try. Let's start with this video. When the client comes up with a video and asks you to play it really loud, you need to talk to him about that. And if the event is bigger and there's another hierarchy going on and you're not in the position to talk to the clients, then talk to your production manager, your technical director, whoever it is. Somebody needs to talk to somebody about how this is not a good idea to play that video really loud. You can turn it up somewhat, but not really loud, and you have to put your foot down a little. Now you may argue, they might think it's just me who's not capable of bringing up the voices loud enough so they can compete with the video. Yes, but this situation that you tell somebody something about physics, about limitations of something is not going to work, there will always people thinking that it's your fault and you are just not good enough to do it. That will happen to you all over the place. And this only gets better over time with more experience and more people that know you and trust you. Well, that's no reason to not even try to convince people and let them know what's going to happen and why this is not a good idea. At least you have to try. So let's say you play the video, not too loud, but loud enough, and now the host comes on stage. Now, first of all, I told you in another video that when I use handhelds for speech, I very often start with a flat EQ and just a low cut, but not if I have an event with mixed mics. I told you I have the subgroup with all mics going down that subgroup. And by the way, of course, you can have multiple subgroups if you want to. You can have a subgroup for clip mics and one for Lectus mics and one for headsets. For me, it just turned out that all my default EQs on all these mics will look pretty much the same. So I use one subgroup. But I will also send handheld mics down that subgroup. Why? Well, while the subgroup will make this handheld mic sound worse, if you will, because there will be a lot of cleanup in the low mids and taking out frequencies that are difficult or dangerous. And the handheld mic will not need all this or most of this, so it will sound thinner than it could sound, but it sounds closer to the headsets and the clip mics. That's your goal. You make the handheld mic sound worse, but you make it sound closer to the result that you will get from a headset or a clip mic. So now the host comes on stage and starts talking. It will still now, even especially with this EQ and the subgroup, it will sound a lot thinner and smaller than this voice in the video, but that's something that usually people can grasp immediately. So I never had a complaint about something like that. So now you bring him up to a certain level. I mean, just imagine it's the beginning of the show. People are probably still talking to each other, mumbling around. So you bring him up loud enough so it's intelligible. And now, so as he speaks, usually what happens is people start focusing, stop talking to each other. The entire room gets quieter. And now what you do is you reduce the volume of that speaker ever so slowly, a little bit with every sentence. It becomes quieter and quieter, of course, still intelligible, and people get more focused. By the end of this process, you probably have them at a level that kind of matches the level of that clip mic that follows when the CEO comes on stage. It will, of course, sound more roomy and even thinner and everything, but you need to get it somewhere in the ballpark. That's important. And you have to keep that volume strategy. This clip mic is now your level. If you have people on headsets, you bring them down on that level. Everybody else. This does not guarantee that this will run effortless through the entire day, but it's a good start. And if later in that day you have somebody on stage who's really so quiet, maybe again on a clip mic and really just mumbling, at least people around you, the agency and everybody has gained some trust in you. So they will not come up to you telling you to bring that speaker up. They might even go and approach the speaker himself or herself to tell him or her to speak up a little. And also there could be somebody talking to speakers that are obviously unexperienced and just tell them to speak up a little. Talk to the people like you don't have a microphone. And if that raises their voice a little bit, that already helps. The thing is, if you come to the very quiet range of the human voice, then the difference between mumbling like this and speaking like this is already a world when you amplify that. A good example for this is I used to tour with David Copperfield as a system engineer back in the late 90s or so, the magician or illusionist, or whatever you want to call him. And David used to mumble a lot, especially when it was the matinee show and he was not yet really awake and on autopilot. His voice was really, really, really quiet. And of course, he was not the guy that anybody could step up to and ask him to speak up a little. So when you went to certain arenas like the Palau Sant Jordi, or how you ever pronounce that, in Barcelona, it's a 17,000 seat arena with a very challenging acoustics. And knowing that maybe in these days David was sometimes in a bad mood, they would bring in an entire truck of additional PA just to cover the difference between this and this. So if he talked like this, it was a problem. When he talked like this, it was all okay. It comes to show you this difference can become really expensive. So let's talk about mistakes I made in preparation or in the sound check, if you will. Most of the time, you will need a dummy speaker. I mean, nowadays, I'm kind of, if it's not too big, I'm kind of in a situation where I can work it out by myself. I can put on even a clip mic at the front of house in front of the speakers and bring it up so it just doesn't feed back, and dial in some kind of EQ, and then walk on stage with my tablet and then bring up the channel a little bit more until I hear the first feedback, and then maybe take out the one or two frequencies that feedback the most, and just kind of take it from there. But when it comes to bigger events, you need a dummy speaker, and there's quite a few mistakes you can make with a dummy speaker. First of all, you need to find somebody who's available, or sometimes there is even only just one person available for this. And if this person is unexperienced and not really confident to talk, first thing that's going to happen is he's going to walk on stage with the microphone and saying things like, yeah, I'm checking this mic for front of house, don't really know what to say. Are you done? Oh, yeah, one, two. It's really difficult to come up with something to say. Are you done? It goes on and on and on. Bottom line is, give the guy something to read, or tell him to grab a smartphone, find an article, preferably about something harmless, not necessarily a political statement about something, you never know who's listening, and read it. Read it like a speaker. Because the next mistake that I see happening all the time, and it happened to me far too many times, and I let it slip because I didn't think about it. Very often, this dummy speaker will then go like, no, I'm speaking very quietly on purpose so you can work out your limits and see how far you can get. That's bullshit. Because what always happened was I was bending the EQ and trying to get it as loud as I could. Most of the time, not very satisfying, but I could get it any louder. And then sometimes that resulted in a sleepless night before the event. But at the end of the day, everybody who was speaking in this event was a lot louder than this dummy speaker. But now that I dialed in this impossible EQ, they all sounded like Mickey Mouse. So it doesn't work that way. So what you do is you have the guy talk in a normal way, even speak up just like a real speaker. And maybe at the end of it, when you're done with all that, you can tell him to kind of talk quietly and see how far you can get, and then maybe prepare an EQ on frequencies that are likely to feedback without really engaging them. Just prepare the frequency. And that should be good enough. Another thing you should do, you should have the guy walk the stage. Because very often, especially with clip mics, there are areas that are more dangerous than other areas. For example, in the center of the stage where left PA and right PA, well, for you it's the other way around, add up, that might be a dangerous spot. Or at some, you never know about the reflections that are going on. So have him walk the stage with this microphone. Remember the spots that are dangerous. So what you can do now is, if a speaker walks into these spots, you can use your pan, just pan him over the other side a little bit, see if that works. And another mistake, I just touched this already before. Make sure, if you don't know about the speakers that you're going to get, make sure you get a chance to brief them, yourself or the miking guy, whoever. At least try to gather them all and do a quick briefing about how to hold a microphone. Tell them to, like I said before, speak up, speak to the audience like there's no microphone. Tell the people that are wearing headsets and are mic well before their time to go on, to try to be aware of the fact that if they touch their face in any way, they might bend the microphone out of the way. Although I told you in another video, there should always be somebody checking these headsets mics right before people get on stage. Again, this is a very crucial point. A lot of these people might forget everything you told them, but it's worth a try. So finally, let's get to some technical mistakes I made. First of all, always switch on power lock on the microphones and the transmitters. The thing is, all I work with usually is Shure or Sennheiser. If you use other brands that might not have a power lock, but maybe you can put some tape over the on-off switch or anything. But you should avoid that the people on stage can switch on and off their mics themselves, because all kind of weird thing can happen. Like somebody goes on stage with a handheld, and maybe you miss the first second, you miss your cue. So the guy on stage will immediately think the mic is not switched on, and if he has the switch right there, he will switch it off while he wants to switch it on. If you happen to have a short dropout or something, then some people start playing with the on-off switch. for some reason. So if you have a power lock, use it. And when you check the RF coverage of the stage, yourself or somebody else, that person should always try a handheld and cover the antenna at the bottom, because a lot of speakers hold a microphone like this while they cover the antenna. That is as much as I can think of right now. If you have got something or you have further questions, write it in the comments. Or if you have a lot of questions, then consider booking a coaching call. I offer these now. That's it for today. Bye-bye.